Is that it?
Oh, and Vinny's still coming in.
Okay.
Okay, I think that's everybody.
Okay, my apologies. You had a little technical difficulty. It's now 7:05. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Planning Board of November 4th, following the guidance issued by the Commonwealth in March of 2023 regarding the open meeting law. This public meeting will be held remotely, and individuals wishing to participate may do so by utilizing the Zoom video conferencing technology and clicking on the link, hopefully from the agenda that's on the Dover website. We have a very busy meeting tonight, so I'm going to get started. The first item of business is a public hearing for 2 Dedham Street for the cell tower. This is a requirement for a special permit. So I am going to open up the public hearing and read the notice.
Should we do a roll call, Carol?
Oh, you're right, sorry. So we have roll call tonight. We have Val to
Here.
say, Jody,
Here.
Bill,
Here.
George,
Here.
and of course myself. So we have all 5 members of the planning board this evening. Thank you for that. I'm opening up the public hearing. I will read the legal notice. This was in the local newspaper for 2 weeks, as well as being posted in the townhouse as required by law. In accordance with the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 40A, Section 9, the Dover Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, November 4th at 7 p.m. remotely on Zoom to consider a 5-year extension request for a previously granted special permit for New Singular Wireless PCS LLC-AT&T. The applicant, New Singular Wireless PCS LLC-AT&T, was granted a special permit extension for 5 years for a wireless facility located at 2 Dedham Street on March 11, 2019. On February 15th, 2024, the applicant requested a 5-year extension to the existing special permit. The board will hear this request at its public hearing on Monday, November 4th. Copies of the application are available and on file. So thank you for that. The process of a public hearing is, once I've read the notice, we are going to have the public hearing. This is an opportunity for presentations and for any citizens to have their comments. We will then vote to close the public hearing. The planning board will then discuss this, and should we choose to take a vote, the vote will be taken and the public hearing will be closed. If we need to continue the public hearing, then we'll request that with the applicant. So with that, I would first like to know who is here for this public hearing on the AT&T cell tower.
Yeah, good evening. My name is Ed Parry. I'm an attorney at Brown Rudnick. I'm here representing the applicants. We have a number of people with us who I'll either call on or I can address questions if anything comes up, but I'll be doing the presentation to the board this evening.
Good to see you again, Ed.
Thank you. Good to see you again.
A little longer this time, I think.
Yes.
So could you just tell us who you have with you tonight?
So I have, let me go through the little screens here. I have Jerry Squires.
Hello.
Who is here representing T-Mobile. I also have Don Hayes, H-A-E-S.
Good evening. I am here, and for some reason my camera's not working, but let me keep working on it.
It's probably better that we can't see Don anyway, so.
Well, I really don't want to deny people the opportunity. Let me look into it.
I think Don is a familiar name to everyone, or some on the planning board. I think he does the emissions reports to confirm compliance with the FCC standards. Rebecca Rafferty is also here. She is site acquisition consultant for SAI, and she is here on behalf of Verizon. I do not see anyone yet from Dish. Not that we need to hold up the proceedings to do that. And we also have Miguel Nobre, and he's from the engineering firm.
Yes, I am here.
VRG, Vertical Resources Group. who did the plans that we'll go through this evening. I think that rounds us out.
Okay, thank you very much. So Ed, would you like to start the discussion? and
Sure.
know
Yeah,
what we're
ju-
going on tonight?
Yep, just briefly, just so we, everybody understands kind of where we've been and how we got to this point. So the Dover zoning bylaw has a time limitation for its special permits for wireless communication facilities. They are granted in increments of 5-year terms. Back in 2019, I renewed the AT&T special permit, which included the tower. That got us out to 2024. Prior to the expiration, I filed the request to renew the special permit. I think that occurred back in February. I appeared before the board in March. I appeared again in May. In consultation with the town, we were trying to sort of get everyone in one path here so that we could get the special permits to be coterminous. The town, during this time frame, it issued an RFP because all of the leases were also expiring. So it's been in place for so long that the 20-year term on the leases came up. So the town issued the RFP. It was structured in such a way that the winning bidder would take the lead in re-permitting the tower and all of the co-locators on the tower. So AT&T and myself were fortunate enough to win that bid. So we're here leading the way for the 4 carriers. Now, Dish is a new co-locator on the tower. They were not in existence back when the leases were done. They responded to the RFP. So this evening we have 4 carriers that have a lease with the town of Dover. AT&T, which remains in the top position on the tower. Next in line is T-Mobile. Below that is Verizon, and then Dish is attaching just below that. It might make sense at this point if I can share my screen, I'll just pull up the plans and we can run through briefly what we're proposing to do here, and then we can take questions. Is it okay to share the screen?
Absolutely.
All right, let's see. How did I do?
We've got it.
Excellent. So this is just the cover sheet of the plans. We have all 4 carriers listed. This is what the monopole currently looks like at the DPW site at 2 Dedham Street. I just included that so that for board members that weren't around way back when, this is the pole that we're dealing with and the fence compound down at the base. This is the elevation depiction. So as I mentioned, AT&T is up at the top. There's actually a town-owned whip antenna that services either DPW or public safety on the top of the tower. The tower is and has been 135 feet since it was installed. This is AT&T's configuration with antennas, remote radio units, and the like. Next, below that is, as I mentioned, T-Mobile, then Verizon in the third, and Dish will be attaching, subject to your approval, in the 4th location on the tower. The compound is surrounded by a stockade fence. When we discussed this proposal with the town and through the leasing process, the DPW requested, and the town obviously, that we move the gate. So the gate was actually approved in this location here, I guess to the south side of the compound. There had also been some damage over the winter, or over many winters, no doubt, with DPW plowing snow up against the fence. So this was really an area that needed to be worked on. We agreed with the town. We will, if we haven't already, repaired and replaced the damaged fence area. What the town also asked through the DPW is that we move the gate to the, I guess, east side of the compound so that all of this area would be free for the DPW for equipment and the like, and we wouldn't be having to deal with snow removal to get access to the site. So we've agreed to move the gate over in this vicinity here. Each of the carriers have a platform and equipment cabinet for the base station equipment. And this is the new addition of dish here, all within the compound and on a slab, which was previously vacated by Sprint. That's the crux of what the site looks like. During the consultation with the town asked that everyone upgrade their equipment as we're going through this process. AT&T is satisfied with its current equipment configuration, so there are no changes proposed to their existing. T-Mobile and Verizon both had some minor upgrades that they were seeking to do, which is part of this proposal, and then Dish will be co-locating on the pole. Dish uses 3 antennas. That's why you see they're a little bit tighter to the pole than the other carriers. For the most part, that's the extent of the changes that are taking place. T-Mobile, Verizon, both with upgrades and Dish attaching. We did provide an emission study from Don Hayes to show that we comply with a tower of this height. We expect to have pretty minimal radio frequency exposure. And if you take a look at the report, you'll see it's only, I think, 4.05% of the FCC maximum. And that's all of the carriers under worst case scenarios. So with that, that's kind of what we're proposing to do. The town has, I'm sorry. The town is aware of the proposals. We did get authorization to file this application. It's been vetted both by town council, I guess, and the wireless consultant Isotrope, David Maxon, who's retained by the town. And I know that I've had discussions with the town manager about this. So with that, that's the extent of what we're looking to do. We're seeking a renewal for an additional 5-year period. The lease has run out to about 20 more years with the town. In consultation with town council, Bill Solomon, I think what we're suggesting be done is to issue special permits, or actually issue 5 special permits. One would go to the town. It's kind of a unique situation. The town actually owns the tower. AT&T sort of manages it for them, I guess, but there is there's a relationship between AT&T and the town. So we'd look to have a special permit issued for the tower, have a special permit issued to each of the carriers. We would hope that they would all get issued and approved at the same time, so that they're all in sync as far as termination. I know that various carriers have appeared before the board at various times to renew special permits and make modifications. So hopefully, in working with town council, we'll be able to come up with and the planning department come up with an acceptable form of decision. But that's kind of the game plan that the town has agreed. And I'm in concurrence there. I think that makes a lot of sense. With that, we'd be happy to answer any questions. As I said, we have our civil engineer here. I'll also mention that we did, because of the length of time that's going by with respect to the age of the pole, we did do a new structural analysis and provided that. And we do have, as I said, Miguel did the civil work and can respond to any questions about the structural. With that, I'll stop talking and be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ed. Are there any questions from planning board members? Or maybe we should just have Jasmine express some of her thoughts as well. Questions?
Carol, yeah.
Yeah, Bill?
No, Jasmine, if you want to go first, go right ahead.
I only had one question, which is these new forms are a little bit heavier. Do we know exactly how much the weight increases? Just curious, percentage wise.
I know we submitted a structure. Let me see if I have the I know it passes under all the codes. I'm not sure we have a revision because the equipment, hang on one second, I'm just flipping through them. Miguel, do you have anything specific on the additional weight that's increasing? I know AT&T is staying the same, so there's nothing there. A dish will be added load. I'm not sure if there's, with the changes between T-Mobile and Verizon, they're pretty minimal. I just don't know if that adds weight, but I do know it passes. Miguel, do you have anything you can add there to?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
yep.
Yeah, the changes are minimal compared to basically what we're doing. We're adding Dish to the same location where Sprint was previously. So the net addition previous to what Sprint had, and I have to go back and look, but it's basically a 1-for-1 addition.
So so what you're saying is that there's no, that there's minor and no substantive increase?
Correct. And if you look at the structure, we're about at, let me mute myself here. We're basically at, I think, 95% of the structural, which basically, it comes back to where the structure was when Sprint was there. So we basically just swapped Sprint out for Dish, and I think the total addition, I think the antennas are like 60 pounds a piece. The radios are, I think, another 60 pounds each, 60 to 90 pounds. I'd have to remember exactly how much additional weight, but this was a 4-carrier pole, and it's still a 4-carrier pole. That hasn't changed.
Okay, any other questions?
Yeah, this is George
George?
Sidgwick, planning board member. Just a quick question. I think maybe we went over this last time, but just so I'm clear, so the town owns the land and AT&T manages the tower itself. With multiple carriers on there, so it seems like a bit of an unusual arrangement. Normally, the likes of an American Tower would own the land, be the tower operator as well, which would have some sort of master lease agreement with the carriers. But so with AT&T, are they? You said they're the operator. So for the likes of for sort of the structural considerations that we're asking about, are they the responsible party for that? Is that right?
Yeah, so in this instant, well, the town is actually the responsible party because they own it. So let me just step back about the relationship. So town owns the land, AT&T and the other carriers lease space from the town. So it's not unlike, and I represent American Tower frequently also, in all of the tower companies. Typically they don't own the land underneath. So the town owns the land. AT&T and the other carriers lease space. The unusual part is the town owns the tower. So it was constructed, turned over to the town. It has happened. I have seen it, I have seen this type of situation. When I said AT&T manages, it's very loose because there's no management agreement in place. But when it comes time to do anything, the town comes to the carrier, the lead carrier, and says, okay, time to renew the special permit. AT&T takes that lead. In this instance, we also need to do an updated structural. AT&T undertook that. Now, these costs for the renewal, structural plans, et cetera, will be shared among the 4 carriers, but the town doesn't incur any expense. It's very straightforward. We just get what we need for permitting, both special permit and eventually for our building permit. We incur the expense, we share it, and the town reaps the benefits. So the town actually gets paid individually from each of the 4 carriers. It's not like they pay American Tower and then American Tower shares co-location revenue. Everything's done from the carriers directly to the town. All 4 carriers have a lease directly with the town. So there's nothing special about AT&T other than they're just at the top and won the bid, and they're responsible for the maintenance. When issues arise that may not be carrier specific, the town calls us.
Okay. So the town gets paid by the carriers.
The-
AT&T is responsible for the structural integrity.
Well, the town's actually responsible for the structural integrity, but they come to us to get the structural when they want it. So
Okay.
when something goes on with the tower, as part of the building permit process, they'll come and say, well, to apply for building permit, you've got to have a passing structural. So in this instance, AT&T undertook all of the activity to get all the information from all the carriers. So it's a little odd that we're all here at the same time with one set of plans, one structural, but that's the way, the town requested it be done. And
Thank you.
it made sense, frankly. Did that answer your question?
Yeah, Carol, I have a couple of questions. I'm also a planning board member. So kind of along the lines that George was asking, I'm interested in the structural update. Was there anything that was found that's requiring maintenance? So that's one of my questions. How old is this tower? And what is the average lifespan of these towers? And then I guess a couple of my other questions have been answered already with the weight of each of the antennas.
So Miguel, can you provide some insight on the two questions there?
So basically, lifespan of these structures, probably looking at, anywhere from 25 to 50 years, proper maintenance, there's no reason why a structure like this, properly maintained, wouldn't last 50 or more.
Miguel, any maintenance required to achieve the passing structural maintenance, any, modifications, or did structural just handle all of the load?
Other than, making sure that everything is properly installed by the carriers, there's no visible damage to the structure when installation occur. Not really. These are pretty low maintenance type items.
Do we, I guess the question is, do we have to do anything to modify the tower to accommodate the loading that we're talking about now?
Absolutely not. The capacity of the structure is well within its original design. There's no additional modifications that need to be done. It is designed to support everything that is proposed on these plans by all the carriers that, Verizon, T-Mobile, and Dish.
And I believe you said that it's at 95% of its weight capacity. Did I understand that correctly?
Correct.
Okay, so it sounds like you wouldn't be able, the tower wouldn't be able to handle an additional antenna or group of antennas, but maybe could handle a small amount of additions to the items that are there currently. Would that be accurate?
Correct. It is a 4-carrier pole designed to support 4 carriers. There are 4 licensed carriers. I do not see the need for any additional carriers, but who knows? Things change in the future, but that's something you'll address when that time comes.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, just so there are 4 major carriers operating in the Massachusetts market. These are the 4. If in fact somehow a 5th became available, then and they want to co-locate, they would come in if the tower could accommodate them. Great. If not, then they would have to either modify it or rebuild it. Obviously, the higher up on the tower you are, the more loading it takes. So, as we're getting lower and lower, we're getting closer to the base and where the structural or where the tower itself is the strongest. But if somebody else came in and the tower wouldn't work for them, they'd have to comply with the bylaw and either strengthen it, modify it, or potentially replace it.
And how often structural assessments completed?
I don't think there's any specific time. The carriers visit them from time to time, so everybody is watching for things to occur or maintenance that needs to be required. If antennas need maintenance or replacement, when they're up in the tower, the mounts are checked. Typically, it's when a building permit gets pulled. So anytime a carrier is going to do something and they have to go to the building department for a building permit, a structure will be required especially if there's any weight being added.
I didn't know if there was, like every 5 years or something of that sort, or annually, if there's some sort of a visual inspection that needs to occur. And then would Dover reach out to AT&T, or does AT&T do that on their own?
Dover would have to reach out. See, Dover owns the tower, which is kind of the unique thing
Yeah.
here.
Okay.
Yeah, but the carriers visit the site the most, and in this instance, you've got DPW there.
Okay, great, thank you.
Bill, did you have some questions?
I did have a couple of questions. Thanks, Carol. Can you remind me, when was this tower that we're looking at erected, please?
I'm going to say it was approved back in 2005.
So is this a new tower that was built, or is this the original?
Which tower? Well, the tower that we're attaching to, this is the original tower from 2005.
So my question is, when was the original tower built? Installed?
2005. That's when it was approved. That's when it was built. There was an older tower. I mean, I had to do a little bit of research on this. There was an older tower there that was owned by a company called Crown Castle. They were going to rebuild it. It just seemed like a number of issues arose. An RFP was done. AT&T ended up winning the bid, constructed the tower in 2005, and then turned it over to the town. So it's been there since then, and it was last renewed in 2019.
Hi,
Okay.
I have a question. Sorry, I just want to I live behind the tower. My understanding the tower was moved because a neighbor sued. Fryer sued and had it moved about 200 yards further into the town yard. So it used to be close to the Fryer's house on Haven, and then it was moved directly into the town yard's property in 2005.
And Nicole, what's your address, please?
13 Meeting House Hill Road.
Okay, thank you.
So, Ed, do these towers ever fall down?
Not if they're properly maintained. They're, the goal is that they stay for good. They have to meet code.
Right. Okay. Good.
Has it ever happened? Probably.
Right.
They typically bend, somewhere in the middle because that's where all the weight is. So, when the antennas, et cetera. I mean, if you've been down to Florida after a hurricane, you'll see that the monopoles are typically bent over on themselves. If they've sustained any damage. As I mentioned, the weight is, and Miguel can weigh in here, but the weight is at the top where all the antennas are. As the wind hits it, it starts to, bend at a point, and very infrequently do they snap off.
Okay. So what we have in front of us is the illustration of the 4 carriers that are being proposed, and obviously Dish is going to be switching out with Sprint. And so this is the proposed. I don't have obviously the existing where Sprint was. So my question is that if you look at the lineal area of these 4 providers, with Dish coming in, is the lineal area of these 4 carriers increase? Or will it be exactly the same or less as what currently exists on the tower today?
If you could just help me with what you mean by linear, I might be able to help you there.
Yeah. I was trying to what I'm just trying to get is from if you look at the top tower and you go to the base of the bottom provider, okay, the bottom provider, which I believe is Dish.
Correct.
The lineal there's a lineal measurement from the top to the bottom of that last provider. And my question is as proposed in your plan, is that less, equal to, or greater than what currently exists today on the tower?
I get it. So it's greater than, if you take a look at the left-hand side of that sheet,
Thank you.
that's the existing, so that's AT&T, T-Mobile, and Verizon. So Sprint used to be located just below Verizon. So if we move over to the proposed, you'll see we don't have a fourth carrier on the existing pole to the left, and that's where we add dish here. So right now you've got from the top of the tower 135 feet. I mean, they're roughly in 10-foot segments. So 10, 20, 30 feet. So you're probably talking about, see, Verizon's located at 113 feet center line. So they're 22 feet to the center. They're probably at about 109 feet to the bottom. So you've got 135 to 109 currently is occupied by the three carriers. They're all, I mean, the three top ones are going to stay the same. It's just going to be the addition of dish. So that's going to be 113 and dish is at 10. Is that a 1? Hang on one second. Yeah,
Yes,
dish is
101.
dish is at 101. So you are looking at 113, 109. Probably a 10-foot increase, a 10-foot increase in linear distance. That would be from top of AT&T's antennas to approximately
So from the
dish.
top being AT&T to the bottom, approximately 40 feet, as
Correct.
opposed to what's currently today. Did I hear you say 28?
Today would be 135, 109, 20, 109. I see some radios hanging down here. Hey, Miguel, do you know what the bottom of Verizon's stuff would be?
Yeah, give me 1 second.
Yeah, I figured you'd have a better shot.
Well, the other aspect is we're talking about, Bill, we're talking about adding dish, but in fact, at some point in the past, not too long ago, when, I don't know exactly when Sprint took their equipment off, but at some
Yeah.
point we did have 4.
You had Sprint there, right?
Yeah.
You had Sprint. So at one time it was
It
a
was
larger area. It's been subsequently reduced. And now
Right.
you're proposing to bring it back again.
Correct.
Yeah. And so, but again, to beyond adding dish, there'll be no more equipment added below. There's no way that any additional equipment could be added below dish without coming back to the town for approval to do so.
Correct. Now, if the town requires co-location to come back to the planning board, yes, they would have to come back to you. There are some, scenarios where they're modifying an existing facility, but generally they're coming back. Any new equipment's coming back to the planning.
Yeah. Okay.
I
And
would also remind you, Bill, that we heard that this pole was designed for 4. So,
right.
right, so
Yeah.
adding a 5th would be very problematic. Or
Yeah,
outside.
in terms of its capacity. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I just wanted to
Yeah.
confirm that as well. And I was there, I missed the last meeting on this, so I apologize, but was
We
there
didn't do
ever
it.
any-
We didn't do anything last meeting.
Okay. Was there ever any discussion over the years that's been here to do any kind of camouflaging of it visually? I know that that's something you see in certain towns, other towns they don't. But it's obviously, it's there in the center of the village. It's quite, everyone sees it. So has there been any discussion ever in the past about this?
I don't know back in 2005 whether there was discussion about doing some kind of tree or, camouflaging. There's no way you're going to modify a monopole to camouflage it or, add. First of all, they generally look awful unless they're, unless they have a background behind them
Yeah.
of taller trees. You'd have to replace the monopole to do any sort of camouflage like that. And that's where you start adding significant loading. So you'd have to design the pole to accommodate, say, these quote unquote tree branches that would stick out of the side of the monopole. It'd have to be designed and done at the time of installation.
Bill, I was a selectman when we did the special permit in 2012. And I have no recollection of that kind of conversation. We also had we also have a pole at the public safety building. Which actually is more visual, I think, to most than the highway garage one. And the decision at the time by the selectmen was just to paint it a certain color.
Mhm.
I think this one has been around for a while, and it is what it is.
Right. Okay,
We
thank you.
have, do we have any other abutters here besides Nicole?
Other than myself, no.
Well, which hat are you wearing at the moment, Bill? No,
Oh,
okay.
I represent the Meeting House Hill Association as well, so I'm here for in two capacities.
Yeah, wonderful. And in that capacity, do you have any additional comments you'd like to make before we close the hearing?
Sure. So my understanding is that there does need to be an annual inspection, regulated by the FCC. So I was wondering when the last inspection was done. It's for safety, EMF, radio frequencies. And my second question is with these new replaced, boxes, are they stronger? Are they emitting more waves, or are they, more powerful with 5G or whatever? Because I do live, very close to it. And it is a huge eyesore. But there's nothing I can do about that now. We moved here in 2007 and it had already been moved. So yeah, so I'd like to understand when the last annual inspection was done, and if these new boxes emit more power or have a higher frequency.
Yep, I'm going to let Don Hayes handle your last question. I just want to be clear, the tower itself wasn't moved. There was a permit application. There was an existing tower there. There was a permit application that was approved. There was an appeal. The location of the tower was moved. The tower itself wasn't moved. It was constructed at that time.
Right.
Crown Castle was kind of like an American Tower type company, decided or didn't win the bid or decided not to participate in the bid. There is no annual requirement with respect to the FCCs. I don't know where you're getting that, but that's not the case. Sometimes the towns will have us file certifications from time to time. With respect to the emissions, Don, that's why I brought Don here this evening. He's the expert. I will say that, we are, they are very low power. I'll let Don give you a few minutes about the power they put out and how that all works. And you can ask him any questions to the board, obviously. And that's what he's here for. Don, you still with us?
I am right here, sir.
Did you get the question?
I did.
Okay, all yours.
So you are correct. There is no annual inspection per se required by the FCC per site. However, the licensed carriers are required to maintain each site in accordance with FCC rules. As far as the power levels, when you look at the changes that were proposed by both T-Mobile and Verizon, they were kind of like what I would consider to be give and take. In other words, there was an additional technology that was to replace an older technology. So even though there may have been a frequency adjustment, there was also a power adjustment. Regardless, what I did, if you allow me to share the screen, I can actually show you.
All set, Don. Thank you.
All right, let's see. Now, I don't want to scare everybody, but that's me. So I just want to show you that I am here and I am dressed and I put on a tie and everything. So this is a copy of the report that I submitted. I looked at the town of Dover having an omnidirectional at the top, which was a two-way radio. Now, one of the things that I did not do for this site was assume that the Dover radio up here on top was off. And so sometimes when we do these analyses, we're allowed to use what's called time averaging, and that is allow the two-way radio to be listening in addition to talking, but I just assumed it's all talking. As we go down the list, you'll see here that there are multiple technologies. So for example, when we look at T-Mobile here, there was an addition of a technology at their 638 megahertz. And so that actually went down in frequency from what was considered UMTS or 850 megahertz. And so that's why I was saying there's a trade-off. But again, in my calculations, I assume that these are all up and running at the exact same time, and everybody is flooding the area with a desire to communicate with this one particular tower.
Excuse
And
me,
then-
Don, excuse me,
Yes.
Don. I
Yes.
appreciate all this. I sort of want to move it along, and I'm not sure most of us.
I'm
appreciate-
sorry.
I know
I-
this is your passion, right? So
Yeah,
it's-
yeah, everybody.
I appreciate that. I guess the bottom line is sort of to the question that we had before about weight and so forth, is that is there any significant change, either positive or more or less, in the emissions, if you will?
No, not appreciably, no.
Okay. Okay.
What
If there-
is,
That answer your question?
when you say appreciably, what is that? What does appreciably mean? Less than 5%?
So in other words, it might have gone from 3.9 to 4.0, or it might have gone from 4.1 to 4.0. Again, it's very difficult to look at all of these individually to assume that they are 100% in operation.
When this, when all this, information was submitted to the town, Jasmine, did we have anybody look at this that understands this stuff? Did
Mike
Mike-
and Jerry said that if we wanted this reviewed by an engineer, we would have to put it out to third-party review. It wasn't something that was within his purview to review, he said.
Was that David Maxon?
No, that was Mikey and Jerry, our town
No.
engineer.
No, I think David Maxon did in fact look at all this. So David Maxon is he runs a company called Isotrope. So he's been involved in this design. And I know that he looked at the RF emissions as part of it and gave his position both to town council and the town that it would be very low power. It'll easily comply, and he had no issue with it. So it didn't require an engineer review. The town actually retained an engineer to work with the lease and to assist with the permitting. I don't know if David is, David, are you on?
We
by
do have,
chance?
I do have his letter here. It is in the packet from David that says, for the record, if you need it, I reviewed the RF safety report by Don Hayes. I agree with its conclusions. The operation of the tower facilities, including existing tenants and addition of dish networks, will be comfortably in compliance with FCC requirements.
No, and he is independent of us. We have nothing to do with him. He was retained by the town administrator and town council Bill Solomon. So we've worked with him on the project since we began.
And, you know, if it's, I mean, I've worked with Bill for over 20 years on these things, so he knows over well, and he knows what the evolution of our tower has been over the decades.
And this was the, thank you, Jasmine. This is the email that I was referring to from Isotrope and David Maxon.
Okay, are there any other questions from either planning board members or from Nicole?
Carol, I have one last question, probably more directed towards you for guidance. Is it understanding that later on this evening, we're having a meeting with the Dover Town Garage with regards to the relocation of a fuel storage facility?
That's not tonight.
But we're not talking about that this evening.
Nope, it's not on the agenda.
Regardless, the point is that, is there any issues that we need to talk to these gentlemen about with respect to the fact that that fuel storage facility may be located adjacent to this tower?
Well, I think the only thing, the only note that I've made is that having looked Jasmine and I went over there a couple weeks ago to look after the first meeting with the fuel storage relocation. And we did know, I mean, the fence seemed to be in good shape and repaired, to Ed's point. But but the gate was still on the, was not around the corner. I don't know if that's the south side or not. So the gate has not been moved yet.
That's correct.
And that's certainly, Bill, to your point, going to be very important.
Well,
Yeah, no, I was-
any changes would have to be outside of the leased area. So outside of that fence compound, it's still town property. You can do as you will.
Sure, no, there's some issues that are
Oh.
independent of this, really.
I'll stay out of other people's issues. I know.
Carol, I can just speak to that the cell phone tower has like a cooling unit at the bottom of it, and it has overheated in the past. So there should not be any fuel put near that cell phone tower, because we've had to call the fire department when that has overheated. Some big cooling unit in the base that gets really loud. So just saying that as a concerned neighbor who lives very close to it, that if that fuel tank is being moved, I strongly oppose it being A, moved towards my house, the homes that are near there, and B, moved toward the cell phone tower that can overheat at the base.
Okay, thank you, Nicole, for that.
Yeah.
We'll have Jasmine look into that a little bit further before we revisit the fuel storage area. Any other questions about this particular special permit? In that case, I'm going to take a vote to close the public hearing. I move to close the public hearing at 7:51. Val,
Agree?
Jody,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay, so the public hearing is now closed. There'll be no more comments, and then we will have our final discussion and vote if you all feel comfortable in taking a vote. So, planning board members, are there anything that you want to share with your colleagues here? Is everybody ready to take a vote? Jasmine, do you have any comment?
No, thank you.
Okay. In that case, I make a motion to approve a special permit for 5 years. Per the, let's see, we don't have to write up on the motion, do we here? Catherine?
No, they're going to work with town council because there's going to be a decision for each carrier.
Right,
So we don't have that yet.
Right. so, the motion is to, approve a 5-year extension of the special permit, contingent upon, approval by town council. Will that do it?
Yes.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second?
Okay, let's take a roll call vote. Val,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay, well, thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you all, and I do apologize for the delay and the time it took to get all of this put together, but I do appreciate the attention and the questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too.
Seems like a good outcome though, because we don't have to have a meeting with every single carrier
Well,
on a floating basis, right?
and it's wonderful to have all the leases,
Yeah,
Well,
once
that's
every
fine,
5
because-
years.
that was always a problem with different terms of the leases, expiration dates. Yeah. Well, Bill Solomon, as I said, Bill Solomon has been working with Dover for well over 20 years on these things. He's just an incredible expert on all this and has taken good care of the town of Dover.
That's great.
Okay, the second item on the agenda is another public hearing. This has to do with renumbering the zoning bylaws. So I am going to open up that public hearing at 7:54. And I'm going to read the notice that was in the local newspaper for 2 weeks and posted in the townhouse as required. The Dover Planning Board will hold a public hearing on Monday, November 4th, 2024 at 7 p.m. remotely on Zoom to see if the board will vote to amend sections 185.46 through 185.55 of the Dover zoning bylaws by making non-substantive changes in the numbering and heading of these bylaws in order that they be in compliance with the format of the Dover Town Code. Copies of the draft of these proposed revisions are available online and on file with the town clerk and the planning board office. So when we were working on the small and medium scale solar bylaw that was passed at the May town meeting, we got into a little bit of a numbering problem because there wasn't any free numbers that made sense. So Jasmine met with town council, and Nina said that we could just redo some numbering using a public hearing like tonight. So Jasmine, I'll turn it over for you for a quick discussion.
Thank you. So we had a lot of these under personal wireless service facilities, and we also had the proposed MBTA bylaw numbered under there. I don't know if you recall that. And it just doesn't make sense to have any of that under this section. I'm not sure why we had continued numbering from there. So we would like to remove this reserved here, and then continue renumbering 46 through 47. So it does impact the rest of them as they go down. So from here down, it is changed, and we do have this reserved for MBTA in the future. And then anything additional, we could either just renumber them again in the future. The next time we have to add something, either this would turn into 51 and 52 and so on, or if it does actually make sense that it goes under a subheading, but that would be less likely. We're trying to keep things out of subheadings where they don't belong.
Are there any questions about this?
It's great to clean that up. That was like kind of crazy, right?
It just made no sense why
Yeah.
we had it under so many things under personal wireless service.
So we were
facility.
doing the 0.1, 0.2, 0.3. That's kind of essentially, I wonder what was the genesis, not that we need to get into it tonight. I know we have a lot on our plate, but that's so interesting. Thank you for cleaning that up.
Yeah, fortunately, it's an easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Any further comments? Okay, if not, I'm going to make, I need to close the public hearing. So I move to close the public hearing at 7:57 PM. Let's take a roll call vote. Jody,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay, the public hearing is closed. Any further comments by planning board members? In that case, I make a motion to amend sections 185.46 through 185.55 of the zoning bylaws as conveyed in the attached listing. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. George,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay, very good. Okay, the next item on the agenda is a site plan review of a pool and spa at 11 Sterling Drive. And who do we have on tonight for this?
Joyce Hastings, representing
Joyce.
the applicants, Taylor and Kristen Duffy. If I could share my screen.
You should be all set, Joyce.
So are you able to see my locus map here?
Yes, we are.
The project is it's at 11 Sterling Drive, and they're proposing to construct a pool in the backyard, and it's at Sterling Drive is here, Yorkshire, and Glen Street. The backyard right now has a series of gardens and pool patios, and so the proposal is to construct a 36 by 18-foot pool. It has the proper setback from the side yard, and then they're going to put a patio around the pool from redoing some of the existing patio and connecting it to the pool. During construction, there'll be an erosion control barrier that surrounds the project. Project access will be from the end of the driveway Right now, there's there'll be a gate right here in the fence. And that's the story. There'll be some lighting out here. It will be all dark sky for the pool and patio.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments for Joyce? Okay, Jasmine, would you like to go through the decision, please?
Sorry, it's loading. There we go. Okay. So we have the proposal to construct an in-ground pool that's 36 by 18 feet and the spa that's 8 feet by 6 feet with a deck area proposed to be installed behind a new patio. Essentially, it will look essentially the same as it does from the road. I don't think you will be able to see the pool or the patio very well from the road because of its situation behind the house. We did receive the site plan by Hollison Survey. The application does comply with the dimensional requirements for the pool. The existing driveway will not be disturbed by this proposed work. The existing parking is adequate to serve this use. It's not impacted. The proposed patio does appear to be in kind with the existing property and neighborhood. It's unlikely this will have detrimental impact on the surrounding premises. It is designed consistent with the character of the neighboring structures. This pool will have impacts on the natural resources and open space, so the site is subject to Stormwater Bylaw Chapter 159, reviewed by the Department of Public Works, which will be done either in conjunction or after this application. The proposed structure does not impact any town resources. It will not interrupt the harmony of the existing buildings, and it does comply with the requirements of the zoning bylaw for site plan review. So these are the recommended conditions prior to the issuance of any building permit, minor mod, approval by the planning board. Any future modifications shall be reviewed by the planning board. The lighting on the site must not spill over onto any adjoining property. The pool must be filled by water truck. The site is subject to review by Board of Health, and the site is subject to Stormwater Bylaw Chapter 159 review by the Department of Public Works.
So I will note that item number 6 in the decision is one that we're probably going to be using an awful lot now that we have the stormwater bylaw, which we did not have prior to the Maytown meeting. Are there any questions?
I have just a couple. Joyce, I know that the pool, I believe, from the side property boundary was about 43 feet, but what is the retaining wall and the patio block? How far is that from the side?
So the retaining wall is, it's at the setback line. So it would be,
So 30?
yeah, the 30 feet. Let me just grab that. Yeah, it's 30 feet.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay,
And
then
are there, oops, sorry, Carol, one more question. Joyce, are there trees being removed within the setback, the side setbacks or the rear setback during the construction that you're aware of?
No, there's a couple of cedar over here that they're working around. These are landscape plantings. There are no trees that will be removed during the construction of this. They're going to work around what's out there.
That's great, thank you.
any other questions? In that case, I make a motion to approve the application per the decision that was read out by Jasmine just a few minutes ago. Do I hear a second?
Second,
All in favor, Jody,
yes.
George,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Carol, yes. Who did I miss? Did I get everybody? George?
Yes.
Val.
Yes.
You should notice that I'm not doing in any particular order, so.
Right.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Joyce.
Thank you. Good night.
Have a good evening. Okay. The next is a site plan review of a garage at 20 Haven Street. And who do we have here tonight?
Vin O'Brien.
Hi,
Carol.
Vin, how are you tonight?
I'm good, pretty good.
Anybody else? Just you?
Justine, you're in.
Justine, thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Ryan O'Connor, 19 Haven Street.
Okay,
And Nicole Safarian, 13 Meeting House Hill.
okay. Okay, Vin, do you want to do your thing?
Sure. I'm not sure I'm going to be as technologically savvy as Joyce in sharing my screen, but Jasmine has everything that you might need to show. In essence, this is basically going to be a driveway accessing a garage to the rear of the property. I do know the board had a couple of questions about the garage. And the primary question was the garage doors, which way will they be facing? And they will be facing towards the DPW garage, not towards the street. And in the narrative that was provided, that's explained that the garage area, the garage doors will be towards the rear of the property, and towards the front of the property, there'll be more of a kind of barn look with a French door entrance in the front. And on each side, there's windows and just one passenger door. The other question the board had asked me today is from a neighbor, what is the grade of the driveway? Is essentially fairly flat. At one point it's 102, but on average it's 101 feet, and that grade's not going to change. The other question the board asked is whether the driveway would be paved, and it will. One of the issues I have, the engineer who prepared the plan, Ron Tiberi, has a conflict this evening, so we may have to come back to you with calculations based upon information that Jasmine provided to me today regarding the idea that this, since we're in a groundwater protection district, or at least it appears we're in a groundwater protection district, any impervious area in excess of 10% needs to be recharged on site. And I do know there is a gravel infiltration trench, but I don't know the calculation whether that is sufficient to capture that approximately additional 9% in excess of the impervious requirement. The goal in the design here was to make it a very attractive building, to be in pretty much in form with other buildings in town. We didn't want it to look like just kind of a boring garage. We think the design is pretty attractive. And we also we took into consideration, the neighborhood not having the garage doors either facing the street or facing abutting neighbors. So that's essentially the concept. We did provide a narrative. Other than the calculation of the impervious, I believe we addressed all the conditions of the site plan application. But if there's any additional questions, I can answer them. And in addition, in light of the fact we may have a follow-up meeting, if you think it's reasonable and appropriate, we can have the site engineer attend that meeting too.
Okay, thank you, Ben.
Welcome.
Any questions? Well, I have a few then.
Okay.
I know then that there is an easement in the back left corner of that property, I believe, that comes from 16 and 18. I don't see it I don't see it here, but I remember when we were working with Jonathan on his car club.
Oh, they were going to have a proposed easement for parking, I think, or something along those
Yeah,
lines.
exactly. Does that have any impact on this property and the use of this garage?
It should not. I will confirm that. I'm not even sure. I don't know the nature. I wasn't really specifically part of that, although, certainly I'm aware of it.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that if that easement was proposed or actually recorded. I'll find out.
Okay, I appreciate it. My concern is that the garage is, I mean, the garage is, you know, bigger than the house, if I remember correctly. Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
it's, you know, in Dover, we love a lot of things. We love horses, dogs, and a lot of guys love their cars. So, this is a car lover, kind of like, Gary Lilienthal had his garage with his cars, and there is a love of cars in this town. However, in this particular design, he tried to design it more like a barn, so it wouldn't have the appearance of a garage.
I understand, but when you say he, who do you mean? This is a rental property.
It currently is rental property owned by an individual who lives in town, correct, right?
Yes, Peter Highland.
Right.
And is this 4-bay garage being used to store some of his cars? Or is it
All of his
strictly for
cars,
the
yeah.
use of the rentor?
It'd be mostly for his cars for right now, not the rentor. His personal use. Currently, he stores them about 20 miles away, and I believe Randolph, so he'd rather have them closer.
Because your narrative talks about the family, the family, I assume you meant the rentor, owning 2 cars.
The renter would have, might store his cars there too, but the primary purpose will be for Peter to store his nice cars. Ultimately, the renter right now, by the way, works for Peter. He's helping the guy out, so there is a relationship there.
And there's no intent to use this garage for any commercial purposes of renting space out to other Dover car aficionados?
Nope, that's not his intent. Nope.
Would he have an objection if we put that in in part of our decision?
I'll ask him.
Okay, appreciate it.
So Carol, if I may, if I don't want to cut in front of you. So is there an image of the building itself that we can show?
Jasmine.
And while we're bringing that up, so it's a 4-door garage. There's 4 bays, is that correct?
Yes.
So for a 30 by 50 barn, is that just the capacity is 4 vehicles, or could you fit more than 4 vehicles?
I'm sure if you tried, you could put more vehicles in there. I mean, just square footage alone. But to get to the doors, you can only get one vehicle in there at a time. Each door. I don't know.
So 30 by 50 car being 15 feet, 20 feet long. So maybe you could potentially, your max might be 8 cars at the most.
I don't know the math, but that sounds about right. Maybe 6.
Yeah.
You know, with these kind of cars that are high-end cars, you don't want them, opening the doors and nicking the other car or those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And he made it great. He is making great of it to make it an attractive building.
Sorry, I don't mean to cut in, but I just have a quick question since we're on that. And maybe I read it wrong, but I thought in the summary or in one of the documents, it said that it was to be built in 8 days. I can't imagine that's true, though. Did I misread that?
That's what it says. It's sort of a not post and beam, but sort of like a post and beam construction. It's essentially a kit they bring to site. It's not stick built. It's sort of
So it's prefab. That was my question. It's prefab
kind of
building.
like prefab, but more if you ever seen a post and beam barn built, it's all manufactured off site and then put together on site. So it has, it's designed to go up fairly quickly once the foundation is in.
And no plumbing. Is there a second level on the interior?
There's
of
a
the
little
structure?
storage on the second floor, and that's shown. And there's not a good area of where you can stand up, but there is some storage on the second floor potentially.
And no plumbing.
No plumbing.
I'd just like to point out, I'm looking at the plans, it's 8-foot ceilings in the mezzanine, so it's certainly enough to stand up.
Yeah, no, well, if you look at it's 8 foot, but if you look at the design,
Could you speak up a little bit? I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time.
The if you look at the actual, design, at one point it's 8 foot, but really they do show on the plan the 6'8" curve of the ceiling in that area. So as the stairs come up, it's kind of a curved area. So there is some storage up there, but the vast majority it is sort of not habitable. You'll see on plan S6, it shows the 6'8" height. And that kind of is on both sides. Sheet 6. You'll see the as you come up the stairs, there's a kind of a dashed line. So there is an area in the center that is, and it does the collar tie is at 8 foot, but really the usable area is at 6'8", which they call that habitable. So there is an area.
Can you show me where the 6'8" is? I'm sorry.
It's if you look at the stairs, look directly above the stairs, and you'll see line of 6'8" headroom. That dashed line, that kind of shows you where you would have headroom as you come up the stairs. And it goes up 8 feet, and on the other side it comes back down again.
And so the height of the first floor, from the base of the ground floor to the underside of the second floor joist is how high?
Not sure it shows on that plan. Let's see.
Is there any intention of any racking of vehicles inside the facility
I'm sure they would like that option.
to rack it?
Well, not so much the rack, but to have a lift or lifts.
A lift?
Yeah, in
Right.
other words, to work in the cars. I don't think that's in the plans currently, but I think we'd like to have that ability.
So Vin, I must say that the conversation tonight, and the use of this building, is quite different than the understanding one gets from reading your narrative. So, when you come back,
Mhm.
I would appreciate a narrative that reflects the reality,
Okay,
which is not that it's a renter with four, a family of 4 with 2 kids that need cars. It's got to do with the owner of the property who is collecting cars.
yeah, he will be using it also. In other words, it's for the tenant.
Yes, but that's
for the tenant.
totally secondary. That's totally secondary. So if you could redo the narrative, I'd appreciate it to
Okay.
reflect the reality of it.
And I'll check on that easement, and I'll talk to the engineer about the excess impervious area calculation.
Right. And I think we need to have a better understanding about the maximum capacity for the number of cars that might be in the garage.
Okay.
So just thinking back, this is, we spent, I can't even tell you how many person hours and how many tens of thousands of dollars in cost to the town of Dover going through over the last 15 years to a car club close by.
Right.
So I think we're a bit sensitive to a building of this size having a mini car club type approach. So I think we need to have a better understanding of that and what it means. Issues came up as we were looking at the car club relative to, oil spills and all those types of issues, which is why I think it's important for us to understand how many cars can be in there. And what kind of work, you said a lift, well, a lift means work. If you're gonna have a lift and you're doing undercarriage work and you have an oil spill and there's no water, so I think we would just really need to understand this whole thing a little bit better. It's not just a garage.
And I understand the sensitivity of what was going on in the budding property, I do.
Yeah.
This is a privately owned facility, but I understand the board's concern.
And Vin, I assume there's no desire by this owner to ever have like a car show or an exhibit of other vehicles at this site. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Nothing like that.
Nope.
Do we have any other questions for Vin?
I just have one more question. It looks like, so if I'm looking at the original plan, it looks like the driveway is moving, or are you just adding a second driveway? What's,
You know, I'm gonna, that, I need the clarification on that myself.
okay,
Because there's a little, like, kind of little stub driveway coming in right there. I think I have to determine whether that's getting eliminated, because I saw that, I had the same question myself when I was reviewing the plan prior to this meeting, so I'll get back to you on that. That is a good question.
great. And then I do believe that Haven Street is a scenic road, so any changes in the driveway could need a scenic road hearing.
I did go by there today and take some pictures. It's interesting. The plan is a little misleading. If you look at the concrete slab on the left there to the house, no, by the house. Yeah, there. And if you extend it down, where the driveway, where the new driveway shows with the red lines, that's the current access to the property. So there's not a second curb cut. It's just that it comes around to the front of the house.
Right.
Right.
Oh,
When Joe Sullivan lived there, he would drive around to that side to
Right.
get out onto the ramp, so.
So it would be helpful if the plan showed what's going to happen. Either if you're going to be keeping the current gravel driveway that's in the front of the house, to show the entirety on the plan.
I agree. Yep.
Okay.
And it looks like it's probably at least 10 feet off of the property sideline, but I'm just, if the engineer could also help us understand where the
The
driveway is located.
Anything else, Vin?
Just
Going
one
well?
more
From the
thing,
planning
sorry.
Okay, Nicole?
Hi, yes, so I'm here representing the Meeting House Hill Association, which pays the taxes on the conservation land that is directly behind that piece of property. I was just wondering if this encroaches on any of the conservation land, if there'll be any runoff, or if the conservation board was involved, if it is close to that property line.
There, technically, there can't be any increased rate volume of flow from the property. And based upon the bylaw or regulation that Jasmine sent to me, we actually have to recharge if more than 10% of the property is impervious. So that design would prohibit any impact on conservation land. Or should. And as you can't see it here, but there is we made sure we kept the property out of the Conservation Commission buffer zone so that we're as far away from the wetlands as reasonable.
Okay,
So-
thank you.
Madam Chairman, can I speak?
Yes, Justine.
Yeah, first of all, you got the photos, I assume Jasmine and I met today, showing the existing driveway that's not going to be used according to the plans that I saw today for this car club. And I do think the site plan that has been submitted to you needs to have quite a few things added. For instance, the existing driveway, which is not, again, going to be used for this big garage. The big garage is going to entail also, we're down gradient. I should, you got my email, correct? Did Jasmine have time to send you the email that I sent to her late this afternoon?
No,
With all
I'm
my
sorry, I did
concerns.
not send that this afternoon. That was well after 5 p.m., so they did not receive that. I apologize. But I can share
Okay,
that
can
with
you-
them now.
Can you make sure that they get that, Jasmine, if that's okay?
Absolutely.
Basically, from other people's point of view who do not live on Haven Street, people may think we're just a industrial area. I would like to say that we're actually a very scenic road with homes selling between $1 million and $4 million. This is an outrage from my point of view. It's essentially a commercial endeavor that is disguised as a garage. The two major concerns that I have based on existing zoning are such. One is the groundwater protection district. Those of us who are across the street from 20 Haven are down gradient from it. And over the years that Joe Sullivan lived there, when we did have a rainfall, which of course we don't have now, but when we did, you'd have occasionally sheets of water going from Sullivan's property across Haven Street to my land for sure. I don't know if Brian, who's on this call, also experiences that, but that has been an ongoing issue. And anyone who knows my property knows it's like a lake in the front of my land when we do have rainfall. So I'm extremely concerned about discharge going across the property. I know there are recharge trenches that are being proposed. I'd like to make sure that Mike Angieri, or an independent engineer, make sure that since they are proposing, the applicant's proposing to pave over 20% of the property with impervious surfaces, that indeed my property is not going to be flooded yet again with water coming off what is essentially a commercial use in a residential area. And that gets to the second point, that this property went from being owned by a human being, Joe Sullivan, to now being owned by a business corporation out of JEC Associates out of Randolph. I don't like the commercial nature of a car storage garage. I don't like the idea of work being done. I don't like the idea of noise from different pieces of equipment being used to change tires, oil changes, hazardous waste, whatever. I don't understand why a garage needs a second floor. I think all this commercial aspect of a garage in a residential neighborhood needs to be addressed. And I did send Jasmine comments to this effect this afternoon. Sorry, I wasn't able to get it drafted sooner, but it is now, at least with Jasmine, and hopefully it will get to you guys before your next meeting. This is a residential neighborhood. I don't want it to be turning into a manufacturing industrial neighborhood. And I think you should eventually say no to this. If they want a normal sized garage for a few cars, for instance, I did learn in researching this, although it's not in my memo to Jasmine this evening, I did learn that Sherburne, for instance, requires a limit of only 3 bays for cars in residential areas. Now, apparently Dover does not have such a rule. I think this is something that we've got to start thinking about, because this is becoming an issue where people with a lot of money, with a lot of activities that are not really residential in nature, are beginning to infringe on other people's rights, as far as I'm concerned.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay, thank you, Justine. I think it's very clear we're obviously not making any decisions tonight.
No.
Jasmine, do we need to get a formal agreement from Vin to extend this site plan review, given the 30-day?
Yes.
Okay, Vin, do you have any problem with extending it?
No problem whatsoever.
Great, thank you so much. There's a lot of work to be done, and my guess is maybe the December 9th meeting.
Because this month is a disaster as far as.
Exactly.
You get Veterans Day and then you have Thanksgiving, so it kind of gets.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
So why don't we plan on getting together on this again on December 9th? If that date doesn't work for you, Vin, as far as getting all the questions answered and new site plan done, this time a complete site plan, please, then we can move it into January, because we only have one meeting in December.
No,
But we'll plan on
we'll just. I'll communicate with Jasmine.
Great, that'll be great, thank you. Any final questions or comments to Vin as he keeps up his list of things for the next time we look at this? Okay, thank you, Vin. Appreciate it.
I'm on for the next one, I think, so I'll stick around.
There we go.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Justine. Thank you, Nicole.
Bye-bye. Yep, bye-bye. Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a request to extinguish the easement at 2 Draper Road. And we'll turn the bin, and I'm sure that Jasmine will want to put up the map.
Yeah, I think we've talked about this for a while, and we did have a meeting a couple of weeks ago to talk about it, and I know the board wanted to, they had talked about maybe eventually doing a site visit of the remaining easement area, but all we're really talking about is the easement along Adam Leboff's left property line. And ultimately, the other easement issue, I think the board might deal with directly, but if you zoom out a little bit, it's at the top of that. 93B is the lot we're talking about, and there had been a 10-foot easement along that property line, which is what I believe the board is considering removing at this point in time.
So is it the easement that's perpendicular to Draper Road, or is it also extinguishment of the easement on the back piece of the property between?
We'd like to do both. And at the last meeting, it was my impression that the board was willing to do the one perpendicular to the road. Our preference would be both, but I defer to the board in that regard.
I see that Adam is on here tonight.
Yep. Hi, everybody.
Hi, Adam. Do you have anything you'd like to add? Maybe put this in perspective for us?
I think Vin's done a good job describing the situation. I think you know this, Carol. The only thing I would add is that the Pattersons who live next to us have been here for, I think, about 30 years and just attest to the fact that the easement has never been used during that period. And it basically runs alongside of my property, may even be where part of the driveway is. So I think that the priority for us would be to extinguish the piece that runs perpendicular to Draper, as you said. Ideally both, but really the piece next to my property.
Okay, thank you. I'll open this up to planning board members.
Carol, I know that this is an issue that's been going on obviously for a couple of years now. Can you just remind us historically, have we made precedent in the past in extinguishing easements along similar requests? How has historically the planning board treated this?
So the just to go back a little bit further on policy, easements are easements that have never been accepted at town meeting can be extinguished by a planning board vote, and that's the case here.
Okay.
Easements that are accepted at town meeting can only be extinguished by town meeting. Back in May of 2022, we were going to be going to town meeting with a list of easements that Courtney had found that went back 20 or 25 years all over the town.
I remember.
That had never been approved at town meeting.
Right.
And because of some issues relative to Draper Road, we pulled that article at the last minute and did not go to vote. So the intent is to go back to town meeting in May of 2025 with all those other easements, because we were told at least that there were no objections by the property owners to all the other easements. We will, of course, be sending out another letter and getting input again. But this one, we're probably going to hold off on. If you notice that there's a disconnect at Shafter Lane, So that was an easement that was extinguished, basically connecting where it ends at the 012 and then starts again below 012D. That was extinguished back in 2019 by the planning board. So it just adds to the it adds to a total easement that really doesn't make much sense anymore. But again, that's not for the planning board to decide. If the individual owners of all these lots on Draper Road that have their easements want to have their easement extinguished, then they can come to the planning board, just like Adam has come to the planning board. We are going to be asking for a walk. I think Jasmine sent out a doodle to see if we could schedule something with Amy Moot, our trail expert in Dover and chair of the Open Space Committee, just to better understand the easement that comes off of Draper Road. But tonight, all we're doing is looking at Adam's request to move the easement that's on the top and on the right-hand side of his property.
So, sorry, Carol, just the Amy Moot walk would, if we moved on this evening, this would obviously not be part of any of that walk. Just trying to understand the difference between the walk we're going to be doing.
All the walk with Amy will basically go from like the end of Tisdale.
Okay.
Okay, down and around the cul-de-sac. The Shafter Lane cul-de-sac. Jasmine, yeah, so. See the purple line, pick line?
Yeah.
And then the Tisdale all the way around. To
Okay,
understand-
so it doesn't touch lot 93B. What
It does not, no, it does not, right.
So I think at our last meeting, Carol, there was a question about access from the end of Tisdale, and I think we won't know that until we walk with Amy, right?
That's right, exactly. It's for taking a walk, just to understand it better. Yep.
Right. So if we extinguish the access point that we're talking about tonight, and if the area by Tisdale is really not accessible, then that whole easement is not accessible, right?
Well, whether the easement is used or accessible or not isn't really, we can opine on it and question why it's there.
Mhm.
But it's the individual property owner who would have to choose to ask for an extinguishment.
I guess I'm just thinking a little bit about the point Bill raised, which is I can see why the property owner wants it extinguished, and it makes sense to me. I'm just curious from the town's perspective, what is the benefit of extinguishing easements? What would we do that for?
Well, we wouldn't proactively. We would react to a request by a resident as we are tonight.
Just on a case-by-case basis?
Yes.
And so, I guess the issue that I'm thinking about, and I don't have a clear thought on it, I'm just thinking, like, what's precedent? Obviously, if I was a neighbor and I heard that one was extinguished, I'd certainly go to say, I want mine extinguished too. And then the thinking around how do we evaluate whether we agree to extinguish an easement here or anywhere else? You know, do we have a site plan process, and we know we go through points A, B, C, D, E, F, G. But in this case, we're just going to sort of, seems like it makes sense, sounds like a good idea. Maybe it opens us up to, which,
Yeah.
you know, that's all I'm saying. I don't have a
Right,
problem
no.
with extinguishing it. I just worry a little bit about putting ourselves in a position where it's kind of like a little loosey-goosey how
Yeah.
we go about the process.
Right,
Even
which
though,
is why
like,
we've
in
had,
this case, it seems to make a lot of sense, you know.
is why we've had Amy Moot involved with all the easements. So you'll see in the package of material that had been prepared for the May 2022 town meeting, that the map showed how all these different easements, whether it was Snow's Hill or, I mean, they were all over the place,
Right.
were connecting to trails that are currently used.
Right, get it. So that would be the framework. It would be kind of like,
Exactly.
if you're connected to a trail that's currently used, then it makes sense to keep our easement, but if not, then we should probably let it go, because it doesn't benefit the town to have like somebody's driveway.
Yeah, exactly.
I totally
Yeah,
get it.
and to your point, trails are so important to Dover, right? Trails and open space, it's what we're all about. So we want to be very careful with easements that we don't do anything that would impact the ability to keep a trail system going, even if it's not particularly active right now.
Yeah, and
It-
actually, yeah, there's actually a part of this easement system that I understand is being used. So, you know,
Yeah,
and I think we
just
talked
the
about that a
spur.
year ago. From Tisdale, I think in between 03S and 03U,
Yes,
they actually do use that portion of the trail.
yes.
Uh,
That would not be extinguished at
Right.
any point in time.
Right.
Absolutely right.
And-
Thank
and-
you for that.
And, you know, different people, I know it comes as a surprise, but in some respects, you know, I act as a filter. A lot of people ask me to do stuff in town. I say, no, you're out of your mind. You can't do that. And a lot of people, you know, they'll say, well, I have this active trail beside me. I want to get rid of it. I said, well, it's an active trail. I mean, no, that just doesn't make any sense. This particular one is kind of unique because it's, you know, the concept was great, but it really was never used. And from what I understand, and I don't know, and I would like to attend the site visit, the area up around the Schaffner lots, I think is a lot of wetlands that's not accessible either. So it kind of, you know, the concept was good on paper, but I didn't think it functioned. But I think Jody's point is well taken, that the board has to sort of, you know, have hearings and have it open to the public to discuss and have, you know, people involved. And it is not a slippery slope, but you got to be careful about these sorts of things. You do. I agree.
And also, Jody, if we're successful in bringing all the other easements that haven't been accepted at town meeting to town meeting and getting them approved, then that means the ultimate decision on extinguishment in the future,
Comes off our plate, yeah.
which of course the planning board would have to opine on, but
That's a great word. Okay, thank you very much.
so are there any further questions or discussions on this? Hearing none, I am going to make a motion to approve the extinguishment of the easement. Whoops, where's that map? I got it, on two sides of lot 093B, which is 2 Draper Road. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, before I take a final vote, any other questions? Okay, Val,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
George,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay, and I suppose, Vin, you'll work on whatever kind of
Yeah, the
deed
last
changes
time
need to be made and so forth.
I prepared I think I called it easement release or something to that effect. And I can provide, I think I provided the board a copy of the prior version, and I'll do a similar iteration and get it over to Jasmine. You guys can review it, and then we'll be good to go.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
All right, thank you
Adam,
very much, everybody.
Adam, thank you so much for hanging in there for what, almost 2 years now.
You know,
Good things come to those who wait.
patience is a virtue, right?
The little ones aren't so little anymore, but
Well, it's a sad state of affairs. I can't keep them young.
Everything was easy, you know. All right.
Thank you, everybody, for your
okay,
time.
Good night.
thank you.
Have a great night.
You too. Vin, thank you. Bye-bye.
Well, that's nice for them. That's a long haul.
Yeah, really, and I think if you remember, I'd gone over to look at that property when Adam first came up about it, and the easement was basically right along his driveway, and he had, you know, 2 and 3-year-olds and tricycles and, yeah. Okay, let's see. Item 1F, approval of the minutes of October 21st. Any changes to the minutes? In that case, I move we approve the minutes of October 21st as submitted. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. George,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
Jody,
Yes.
and Carol, yes. Okay. And now, the fun part of the evening. I'd like to introduce you all to Matt Hadge. Matt, wave.
Hey folks, how are you?
Well, this certainly gave you a good feeling tonight of what the planning board's all about. We hit special permits, we hit site plan reviews, we hit easements.
Yeah, no, certainly consider myself fortunate.
Yeah, this is as wide ranging as we often get in one meeting, I must say.
Great.
So just to remind everybody, when Scott moved out of town and Val moved up to be a full member, we now have an associate member position open. We're allowed by the bylaws to, with the approval of the selectmen, to appoint an associate member to fill that open spot. Whoever that position will then be up for election at the May town election. So the person that takes the position right now may choose to run in May, or may after 5 or 6 months say, I'm not going to run. And then the associate, then since George announced that he's not re-upping, it means that whoever is the associate member now until May, if that person chooses to stay with the planning board, can run in May for the full 5-year term. And we will have somebody else running for the associate term.
Okay.
So we're interviewing three candidates. We'll choose one as an associate member, and hopefully the other 2 might still be interested in participating in the May town election, so that we have a full complement come mid-May of 2025. So Matt, would you like to sort of just chat a little bit and introduce yourself to us all?
Certainly, certainly. Thanks everybody for your time. I moved to town almost 3 years ago with my wife. We live down way in the corner of town by Westwood and Medfield. We're basically like one of the last like cluster, like 4 houses right before you hit the Medfield line. So we're right tucked in there. But we love it. We have our dog, and we're expecting our second child in March. I have a 2-year-old son, and we have a girl coming on the way. So all good stuff. We love Dover. I grew up in Canton. My wife's from Southern New Hampshire. But anyway, I'm very happy to be here. And you know, all of the very unique characteristics of Dover were exactly what, you know, attracted me to the town. I didn't end up here by accident. And I also have a background in the law and in real estate. I'm an attorney and also a real estate broker, and do some investing and that sort of thing too. And also just kind of have always loved all things local, like growing up. Involved in the Historical Society in Canton and some like Paul Revere stuff, because he was lived there for a while and all that. So this is kind of all within the sweet spot of my kind of like little nerdy side, if I'm willing to admit that. So overall, I just really think it would, you know, be a good opportunity for me to learn more about the town, especially, you know, in the associate capacity, and get up to speed and hopefully, you know, contribute and lend my expertise where I can. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts of where I'm coming from.
Thank you, Matt. I've had the pleasure of working with Matt on the recycling committee for a while as well. So if you're ever at the New Life Furniture Bank trailer on any of our monthly Saturdays, Matt could very well be there.
Indeed.
Also, Matt, you heard an awful lot tonight. What did you find most fascinating, given all the material that we went through this evening? Put you on the spot.
Well, I found that last bit, just with the easements, just like a little kind of unique. I'd be just curious to like dig a little further into the history and stuff there. Like I said, I did a little bit of zoning and real estate kind of specific work earlier in my career, and used to work at the land court, and I remember like digging out easements like from the 1600s being Boston. So some of that can always be kind of neat. But then also it was interesting to see. Obviously, there was a few interested parties for a few of the situations, which obviously I know that can be part and parcel of any local meetings. Certainly, the planning board. Again, in my prior work, again, I didn't do this for a long time, but I did do it for a while in my early career. I represented developers, including 40B developers. So I'm no stranger sort of to the public meeting process, and sort of some pretty interesting cast of characters for some bigger projects I was involved with. But in any event, like you said, there was like a lot to see here for one meeting for me to be in attendance here, just for small town Dover.
Planning board members, you have any questions or conversations to have with Matt?
Matthew, the projects that you were involved in, were they in smaller towns, kind of like Dover, rural, a little bit more rural areas, or were they more urban, like downtown?
Oh, it was North Shore, Massachusetts. So yeah, a lot of some towns with this similar character to Dover, and also some more inner suburb metro towns.
How long did you say, Matt, that you've been in Dover?
Just about 3 years.
Awesome.
But we got in time just enough to have a low interest rate, so I'm gonna be here for life. I can tell you that much right now.
That's funny. Yeah.
Lucky.
Matt, I'll ask a question. This is George. Just each one of us when we join has our own sort of special little, I don't know, cause is not the right word, but area of interest that is close to our heart. Scott's was he was all about getting sidewalks to downtown, and Bill and I are working on the village center. Is there anything that kind of, I don't know, piques your interest, or something that you'd be interested in being in?
Yeah, for sure. And I definitely appreciate that. I think Carol sort of was briefing me on how you guys approach that with the different projects, and I think that's really effective. I think sort of for me, it kind of goes in two directions. One, just with sort of my background, my professional experience as a lawyer, I think, my interest will be piqued because I don't practice that type of law. I work in the private equity space now. So I would really like the opportunity to kind of re-engage with the transactional aspect of these sort of projects. And I think I'll enjoy that. So, the housing plan production and, ongoing dealing with 40B and also the MBTA planning, I'd be definitely happy to, take on something related to that. And then on the other side of things, maybe related to the village center project, or, something that would be in that vein. But I've definitely, the last few years, as the regional housing crisis has become, more prominent, gotten into following, local town planners and other policy experts in that space, and you know, it's very interesting to think for a town like Dover exactly what the future looks like. You know, it's not necessarily as straightforward with such a, you know, unique tradition and features now, thinking how to like thoughtfully plan for that in the future. I think, you know, hopefully there's a project I could take on there where I could, you know, make an impact and move that forward.
Thank you, Matt.
Matt, you talked a little bit about 40B, and that's obviously something that, like a lot of communities where we are, you know, that's always the sort of the 800-pound gorilla that we always sort
sure.
of have concerns about. And, you know, to maybe someone who's not as experienced in the area of 40B, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how is it that you know, is it something that as a local community that you actually can have much insight, you know, much you can weigh in on terms of what you can and cannot control in a 40B project? Have you sort of delved into that? I'd be kind of just curious about your perspectives on the 40B component and, you know, how a town like Dover can protect itself in the future. Obviously, these things are important, but they also have to be done with sensitivity to the local town.
Oh, for sure. And you know, I think 40B, it has its place. It's a little bit of a, you know, a hammer or a blunt object, but you know, not too bad. But in any event, I think the key for towns is to be proactive, and it all ties into, you know, the housing production plan that's, you know, directed by 40 in conjunction with 40B, but then also the overall like Dover master plan, and having a concept, you know, for maybe accepting to some extent that they're all of the greater Boston communities in the long-term future. I'm not, you know, talking in the next 5 years, but in the longer term, generationally, are going to experience some level of infill development, and to embrace it and think of thoughtful ways of development. I don't like large multi-story apartment complexes with limited green space and, you know, smaller units, and also that, you know, plop one big suck of resources into one spot, you know, cottage cluster housing and other townhouses, and like, you know, sort of those sort of developments that have become popular and like that I've seen policy folks sort of pushing, you know, can be ways to allow for more density, kind of do your part and be in compliance, and to do things in a more measured way and in a way that it blends in with kind of the existing lots and the character of things. And so I think, you know, that takes a lot of evaluating the inventory of what there is, and you know, what's appropriate for what, and you know,
Yeah.
trying to do your best, you know, to work with private folks and sort of settle that out. But you know, obviously, you know, 40B to an extent is kind of hardwired, but via the statute. So like I said, that kind of proactive approach and kind of finding the balance is probably going to get the best result versus totally trying to resist it.
Yeah. Thank you.
Matthew, did you mention that you worked with a historical society in another community? Or did I understand
Yeah,
you?
just casually, and like in high school, and then just like I'd always taken an interest, and I have some things I have the Canton Viaduct hanging up on the wall here next to me. That sort of thing. Just something I kind of thought was interesting. I just am a local guy. My whole family has been in Boston since we immigrated from various parts. So, you know, I just always like things local and take pride in that. And Dover's definitely a place that, you know, I think I'm very happy to have, proud to be in already, and, you know, looking forward to kind building those routes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, anything else for Matt? Any final comment you'd like to make, Matt, after this long evening?
Well, no, I think I appreciate the platform. I think I've rambled plenty, and I appreciate everybody's questions. I know it would be a great learning opportunity, but I'm always somebody who usually finds a good way to contribute to the team from day one. I buy into all those kind of cheesy slogans, so I'm sure I can make myself useful to you folks. And I know that there's a time commitment that's also attendant to this. At the end of the day, even though everybody's volunteering their time, is work to be done and, some thought to be put into it. And I understand that. And so, again, just thinking of the long-term view and sort of my goals and plans of being in Dover, for me, I think that's worthwhile. So it's something that I've kind of thought about and I'm willing to take on in that respect too. And I'm respectful of the time that you all put into it. So, I just wanted to mention that I've taken that into consideration.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Great. No,
Thank you, Matt.
thank you very much.
We'll be in touch. You're certainly welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, which shouldn't be too long, but we do have some updates.
Cool.
So thank you, Matt. Jasmine, town planner updates.
So as of, I believe it was yesterday or today, Val, you had sent out the stormwater regulations. So I don't know if everybody got a chance just to look at that. So thank you so much, Val, for all your hard work getting that across the finish line. That was really important. So we really appreciate that. I know we do have on the upcoming application 78 Strawberry Hill, but I don't think that's going to be on the next agenda yet.
Sorry, can I interject for 1 sec?
Absolutely.
So I don't think I got that email. I'm wondering if you might send that to my Gmail.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you. I think sometimes it's I don't for some reason having trouble getting my town email on my Mac. I can only get it on my phone, so I sometimes miss them.
Oh, absolutely.
Thank
I
you.
will make sure.
Looking forward to reading. Congratulations,
Sorry.
Val.
Sorry, Jody, I didn't realize.
No, you wouldn't
Thank
know. You wouldn't know. I should be able to get it on I just can't figure it out.
And those stormwater regs are basically, correct me, it's just sort of the final draft because they have to hold a public hearing, right?
Right, so
With the Board of
we-
Selectmen, yeah.
yeah, so Kevin McCabe, Mike Angieri, and myself met with Nina. We went through the entire draft, made our last and final edits. So she then forwarded us the final draft, which will go to the Board of Selectmen and they will hold a public hearing.
I think it will be important for you to be involved in that because I don't imagine that there'll be a lot of reading every word and understanding everything in the regulations since they refer to the bylaw so much.
And I'll be checking in with Kevin and Mike Blanchard, but Jasmine, if you happen to hear of a date that it's on the agenda at the land department meeting, let me know, please.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I looked at them today and Val and I chatted briefly on it. I think they're good regs. My concern is a clause or two that give the DPW the opportunity to choose to allow a particular property to not have to adhere to those regulations.
Mhm.
And I worry about the discretion of the DPW on that and the basis for that discretion and those decisions.
Right.
And it would be nice if we had a way to track it to look over time to see how it's really being done. It's something, Jasmine, you might want to talk about as this gets finalized and actually implemented at the land use meetings. We already have a situation where we know that the regulations could apply and a decision was made not to. So that.
Yeah, I agree, Carol. I think that there's definitely, it'll be interesting in this first year to see how it's implemented and enforced. And then I think it's, depending on how that goes, the need to circle back and tweak anything on there.
Well, enforcement has always been an issue because enforcement takes commitment and staff.
Right,
We have all these bylaws that never get enforced. So
right.
somebody complains and then it's, well, this person was able to get away with it, why can't I? And
Right.
but this is a very important aspect.
Yeah.
And I think one that will unfortunately or fortunately take up an increasing amount of time by the DPW.
Mhm.
Which could lead easy to, let's just forget about this time, I don't have time.
Right. So one of the things, that's actually a really good point. One of the things that the DPW talked about is right now, if it's a new construction and they get a temporary occupancy permit so that they can allow people to start inhabiting the house, but they may not have all of the landscaping and grading completed around the home or any of the plantings planted. So we talked about actually creating a new process where DPW would have to sign off both on the temporary occupancy permit and on the final. Because right now they would sign off on the temporary and then they would not have to do anything beyond that. It would all fall on Walter. So, so we're trying to get the DPW involved in both the temporary occupancy permits and the final occupancy permits so that they make sure that trees are planted. And we've talked about actually on the temporary permit, talking about dates that things have to be done by, so everyone's on the same page, so it's not like this rolling kind of process that nobody's really clear when things are going to happen. So just trying to kind of nail down some things like that.
And finding some way to track it. Maybe
Yes.
when I'm going to say when and not if we get an online permitting system, that would all be part of it. I know in
Right.
my house on the Cape, we put in a new dock. And Concom took the opportunity to say, well, if you're putting in a new dock, we don't like your plantings, even though they've been there since 1980. And so we now have a planting plan, which we had to implement. And we have to issue a report through a licensed wetlands landscaper every year for the next 3 years.
My God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Mhm. Yeah.
It feels like maybe they're going a little bonkers.
Just a bit. So, but those things otherwise, right? It's meaningless. So.
Right, but I guess the opposite side of that is like more process and more can sort of snowball too. So we have to really find that line.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep. Okay, anything else, Jasmine?
No, that was everything I think that I had for the moment.
Okay, Jasmine did send out that doodle on the Schaffner easement walk. So for those that haven't responded yet, please do so. We'll see if we can find a time. I have just a couple things. The full occupancy permit for the pastures was given on July 17th. So it is being rented now, and I understand that it's way up there as far as percentage of rentals, like in the 80%, 85% range or something like that. So that's moving along. The good news with that is that when the ZBA is looking at the Tisdale 40B, we'll be able to get some data from the pastures on number of cars, number of kids. Because right now it's just conjecture. You know, how many parking spots is the right one? The 40Bs say 1.5 spots. We as a planning board, when we're working on the MBTA bylaw, are talking 2.5 spots. So we'll actually be able to have some data as to what the demographic brings in as far as cars and traffic and school age kids and so forth. The ZBA has their first meeting of that tonight. It'll be recorded, so please take a look at it at your leisure. At some point, George Tomento, the chair, will be asking all the boards and committees that opined for the PEL letter to respond with sort of our own mini site plan review to the ZBA that they can then use to discuss. So that should be coming along sometime, probably next month or so. Let's see. Robin Hunter is now chair of the Board of Selectmen. They reorganized the other day. And Jody, did you want to talk a little bit about the plans for the MBTA?
Sure. I was working on that a little bit this afternoon. So we've been, Carol and I, as you know, and Jasmine all sit on the housing task force. We've been working sort of around the topic of housing in Dover, and obviously MBTA is a big part of it. We're planning sort of with an eye towards a special town meeting in September at some point. No date. I don't exactly know how a date gets picked, but understanding that we're looking towards the fall to handle that. So it takes a little bit of the pressure off between now and May 1st town meeting. So that's great. However, we'll want to use that time really well to think about how we finalize our bylaw through a process that will involve a lot of education and outreach and listening and taking in feedback from Dover citizens. So I'm working on a January through April plan that I'll share with you guys, and Jasmine, I'll be in touch with you about that, at the December 9th meeting. And that I would love to get to you and get your feedback, because it's going to include things like, all the different elements of an outreach plan that we'll need to facilitate. I had hoped we would have our housing consultant on board already to incorporate the MBTA outreach as part of larger sort of housing, but we don't. So we're going to just march forward here because we have a mandate to get this thing to town meeting. And so that's okay. It tightens up our outreach, but I think we can do a lot of really interesting things, like obviously the obvious low-hanging fruit, like newsletters and website and all that stuff, but also some Q&As with the planning board, or, Zoom meetings or in-person meetings at the COA and other places. So just thinking about that. So if you have some ideas after you see the draft, I really welcome them. So that's kind of the ballpark there. We'll spend February through April or January through April doing that outreach. And then June through August, refining our approach to town meeting. We'd like to get a bylaw to the Mass Housing by May 15th, because they have a sort of a 90-day window of preliminary review, just because we don't want to go to town meeting with something that, the state will deny anyway, even if we go to all this work. So May 15th is our target for that, and welcome any help.
I did, thank you, Jody. I did request with the COA, they have a monthly opportunity for somebody from town government to come and talk to whoever wants to attend. Last week it was Chris Costello. Jasmine did it soon after she started. Mike Blanchard has done it. Kevin McCabe has done it. So I asked them to come up with a date for us in February, so we could have their February monthly time slot. We can use that to address some of the questions and get input and educate as well, as Jody just talked about for MBTA. The timing of it is such that it will also give us the opportunity to, at that point, present any warrant articles that we're going to have. So it's right before open hearing, which is a good thing. We will be working on at our December 9th meeting. We'll have a draft on the warrant articles, because the warrant opens in late November this year. So we'll have the warrant articles for the ADU.
Oh my God.
What's a year without an ADU warrant article? So that change the ADU bylaw that we finally got passed, so we can make it match the new AHA that was approved, the Affordable Housing Act that was approved on Beacon Hill in July, that requires some changes. We've got the floodplain and a couple of other little things. So so that'll be on the December 9th meeting, and we'll present whatever we can in February, but at least we'll get on the calendar, have some time. Anything else, anyone? Okay, our next meeting is on the 18th. We will have Katie Williams and Lou Ryan, the other two applicants for the associate position, with us on that evening. And with that, this was quite a meeting tonight, but a lot of content, I must say. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 9:14. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye, aye,
Aye.
aye. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Good night.
Bye, guys. Good night.
Bye-bye.